have is the internet to teach them. They were born on it. It's been their whole lives. And when you're talking about that level of intellectual vulnerability, I shudder to think like some of the things that are being promoted, not necessarily this show, but I'm saying in general, some of the extreme content on both sides, like, get a guy for all his money, or, sleep with 1,000 girls before you marry. Like, these are all bad, this is bad advice. And we follow those things to their logical end, then we're doomed. We're in trouble. I just think that as content creators, we have kind of a responsibility. These kids are, the oldest cohort is 14. These are the people who were born 2010 and after. And in 4 years, they're going to be voting age. They have these issues. Do we really want the relationship advice just in general, the things that they're saying? And I just think that we just need to be more responsible. I think there's a lot of people who disagree.
Are you talking specifically about this podcast? Or about...
No, I specifically said, I think that's why I'm here, because this podcast is good. I said it leans a little bit, but I've seen extreme. And I think that it sows discontent. You are dealing with very vulnerable kids, and you're putting all of this nonsense into them. You're not teaching them how to be in a relationship.
Who is putting...
I don't want to say, but it's not you, okay?
Are you talking about the red pill?
Red pill content, but also sort of exploit men monetarily content, like men are trash. Like, there was a woman here last week, and you were going through her Twitter feed, and it was just one thing after the other about men, this, like, she's so stupid, this, like, that is... Yeah, it's not unnecessary. I think it's just not going to end well if we don't do something.
Yeah, all right. So this isn't a criticism about the podcast? Oh, okay, all right.
No, I just had the voting thing for Andrew, but he wasn't here.
Okay, let's get into some of the other notes. We have Lindsay, hairstylist, used to be a hairstylist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hair looks great.
You dated a Marine, and your roommate at the time apparently had a crush on him. She got drunk and expressed it to me, then bit me literally.
Yeah, literally. So I was like 24, and I moved to California from Illinois when I was 22, and then moved to Newport, got a roommate. She was living there in the 2-bedroom at the time. But anyways, we went out one night, and we met like some guys that were in the military. Keep in mind, this isn't like a trend that she's here too with that. She was like, we didn't like talk about it, and then we went out and met with them like, I think the following weekend, and the one that had a crush on me, apparently she had a crush on, but didn't say that. Now I'm coming from a younger standpoint. So we were in the taxi from the Newport Peninsula going back to the house, and then she just started freaking out, crying. I barely knew her. Like, she was a referral for a roommate, and she bit me. She literally bit like into my arm.
Damn.
Like, took a chunk. Yeah.
Wow.
That's really crazy.
That's crazy.
That's
Do you have a
wild.
scar?
Well, it's pretty much gone now because it's been a long time, but I called the cops because I was bleeding, and I was like standing outside, and the very next day, I called my cousin that night, and they came, and I went to their house, and then we went there tomorrow to get my stuff, but it was really intense. I didn't know her all that well, and it was still kind of
You said that you had a disagreement. You do not agree with Brian giving an ultimatum on if a woman wants a second date, having to fully commit to only going on dates with him. I will elaborate more on the show. Please do.
I don't agree with that because I feel like that there is a mix of who comes on the show. So me, I don't go on a lot of dates. I clearly haven't in 10 months. So my dating with intention, at first dates, it's just, I don't think they're real. I feel like they are a fallacy. They're fake. They're someone putting on their best behavior, showing all their best qualities, and whatever that means, I think that committing to someone before you actually, like, why would you commit to somebody that you just did a first interview with without seeing them in let's make that second date in a natural habitat, like around their friends and in a social environment. Now, people can say, that sounds like pressure. Why are we introducing to friends? No. And my opinion is, when I'm around my friends or I see somebody in their environment, it kind of sees how things can click, whether it's friendships or, I mean, you're not going to go to the family, but in a social environment or some sort of setting where it's not somebody on their best behavior. Every single person is on their best behavior on a first date, and if they're not, then obviously there's bigger issues. But I just think that having that commitment kind of devalues commitment.
Well, I mean, there's varying degrees of commitment, right?
Do you see at all where I'm coming from with that?
Well, I mean, people can operate in different ways.
100%.
But my own personal standard is if you want a second date with me, it has to be a wrap on other dudes.
Are you
That's it.
are you saying a second date with you when it's being intimate, or that means that they cannot go? Like, what if they plan a second date with you and they're out somewhere, whether it's a grocery store, a restaurant, or a bar, and they meet somebody else and they spark an interest. You guys are in a relationship. What if they exchange phone numbers? Is that still to you? Is that the same thing? Like, where is your boundary with that?
Well, sort of, I think the greater context for this is if I were to meet somebody off of if you met them off a dating app,
Right.
for example. I actually don't think it's all that hard to date one person
I agree.
at a time.
I agree.
And this doesn't mean, obviously you can date this person, and if it works out great, or you go on 2, 3, 4 dates and it doesn't work out, then you can move on to somebody else. But if I were to go on a first date with a girl and I find out that she's got 3 other dates lined up with 3 other men, I lose interest immediately. Now, I think that that's kind of pretty common for a lot of people when they're dating. They're dating multiple people at the same time. Now, if a girl is sleeping with a guy and talking to me, that is 100%
Right.
a deal breaker.
Oh, I agree.
A lot of women move like that. A lot of women move like that. If they're sleeping with 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. Not interested at all. I don't even want to fuck you. I don't want to go on a date with you. I don't want to kiss you. I don't want anything to do with you if you're sexually involved with another man. Now, I take it a step further, though. I think that should be the baseline for men. If she's sexually involved with another man, it's a wrap. You don't deal with her at all. Some of these dudes say, recreational use only, you can still fuck her. No, she doesn't get anything. Back to the streets she goes. Now, when it comes, I take it a step further, though. I have higher expectations. If she's romantically involved with another man, this means even going on a date with another man, not interested. There are women out there who are properly single. It's rare-ish. There are women who are properly single who are not involved with another guy, or who are not
I agree.
trying to go on 3 dates a week and they're kind of playing the field. There's women who are not on dating apps, so this is going to be much more common amongst women who are not on dating apps. You, for example, you said you've not been on a date for how long?
Well, realistically, I haven't been on a date since my son's father.
Right.
Like,
And you said you've been single for 10 months, though.
yeah,
Right?
it's probably. I mean, we could give or take a little bit longer, but that's just.
But you haven't
that's
dated.
not
You haven't
fair.
been-
I haven't dated anyone.
Well, I mean, you yourself would be, in terms of how you're moving in the dating marketplace, you're properly single. You're
So
not
we're-
dating other
yes,
men.
yes, so
If I
we're-
were to ask you on a date, there's a fairly good
Okay,
likely.
fine, we can go,
No,
Brian.
okay.
I'm kidding. I'm just-
But if I were to ask you on a date, there's a fairly high confidence level on my part. It's likely that you're not going to have a date
Right.
3 days later, given that you haven't been dating for the past 10 months. So I think finding this actually isn't that rare, and I don't actually think for relationship and commitment-minded men that this is actually a massive ask. And you fall into this sort of category where I wouldn't anticipate you if I went on a first date with you, given your lack of, I'm not saying this to insult you, but your
It's not
lack
insulting. I
of
fully
your lack.
support
I think
that
it's
I'm
good
not
actually. Your lack of romantic prospects. Going into a date with you, I would not anticipate that like the day after you'd go on another
Right,
date.
right.
So I actually don't think it's unreasonable.
I think where I was coming from when I had wrote that, well, for one, the things that I would like disagree on would be just like the way that certain things were articulated and the way they came out when it came to it. So I felt like I just had to put it like an answer.
Sure.
But I look at like, younger, and not all younger girls, but, everybody's in a different type of dating period. And when they hear that, I see like that's where, I would essentially say that disagreements are in a line. But something that ties in, kind of piggybacks on that is, when it comes to like paying for the date, me personally, I don't go on serial dates. I don't go jump around, I'm going to go on a date. If I'm going on a date with somebody, it's like they're special to me. I'm not meeting them off of a dating app. It's just not something I'm interested in doing. So I would definitely want the man to take me out on a proper date and paid. No, I don't need some elaborate, if you try to over-impress, I'm so not impressed because I don't like it. I don't like it when people are over the top. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I can go further into it if we want. If we're
Well,
ready for
yeah,
that
I mean,
topic.
I guess to just wrap up on the whole, like, this ultimatum I essentially give of if you want to continue seeing me, if you want a second date, it has to be a wrap with other men, or there can't be other men in the picture. Yeah, probably a lot of women, that'll end up being an issue because they are involved with other men, whether they're sleeping with them or dating 3, 4, 5 men at the same time. They have a roster, whatever.
Do you tend to attract them? Like those kind of women?
I think I do, actually. Wait, what?
Just asked if you attracted.
Wait, are you saying do I attract
Do
the
you
type
feel
of
like
women
you
that are
tend to date multiple?
No. I attract the type of women that don't do that. Is what I meant.
Okay.
Is what I'm meaning to
Okay.
say. So, typically, anyways. But I was on the dating apps for a long period, and when you're on the dating apps, typically the women on the dating apps you're going to encounter this much more frequently because dating apps give them hundreds of options.
I've gone on it like a dating app, but it's not something I'm like executed.
Yeah, so if you
before.
can find
Is that-
women off dating apps, I think it's much more likely you'll encounter,
Yeah.
and assuming you don't meet them in like bars or nightclubs, you're much more likely to encounter women who are dating a little more intentionally, that don't have like a million men in the picture.
Right.
Dating apps, you'll encounter this all the time. Like it's the woman who doesn't do this would be the exception to the rule. I remember I went on a date with like an average looking girl, and she told me she had just downloaded Hinge. I was like, she downloaded Hinge like a week prior. She'd already been on 3 dates. She tells me this on the date. She said she had 5 more dates lined up, and I instantly just lost all interest. I was just like, okay.
Do you think it takes away the value of your time with that person? I do feel like it takes the value away from your time with that person.
Yeah, I'm just not, I mean,
Saying that for
I'm just
sure.
not really interested at that point.
Yeah. Are you dating to marry?
I don't want to get married.
Oh, I forgot. Are you dating to have your long-term partner?
Yeah, I prefer long-term relationships. I'm not interested in like short-term casual sex or
Right.
sleeping with a girl once and never talking to her again. If I sleep with a girl, I want there to be continuity. I want to continue seeing her, and I do prefer long-term
What about you, Jake?
relationships.
What exactly is the question?
When you go on a date with a woman, do you think that should be like their end game? I'm going other dates or
It depends on who she is, and generally with the type of girls that I date, it would be implied. But yeah, after the first one, I'd say unless they're like a virgin and they've held on to their purity and they're not going around sleeping with other guys and that sort of thing. But yeah, generally I'd say after the first or second date. But if they're a girl who's not sleeping around and they're just meeting guys,
Right.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one because after the first or second date, it would be like you'd have that chat, but maybe I don't know. Yeah.
do you think a lot of first dates sometimes is somebody just putting on their best self, and you can get deep, but only to a certain degree of like the core.
I wouldn't say so from my perspective, because generally I can weed out a lot of things on the first date and ask little leading questions, and you can see where it takes them, what they say, what their answer
Where'd
is.
your interview?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can.
And I agree.
you can very
That's why I
subtly
don't
vet
like
girls.
dates.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't like dates because I'm like, shut up. Like, I know you're not, like, just knock it off. Like, and I think that I don't know, it's a lot of pressure going on a date. If you're dating intentionally, if you're dating to get a free meal or do something, elaborate and bougie that you can't afford to do on your own, well, then I guess you're going to get what you get. But authenticity and someone being their true self is so far lost in a lot of ways, I feel, when it comes to
I have a
dating.
question for you guys specifically, because obviously, like, you're the only 2 men here, in regards to dating apps. Well, I mean, in like this space, this is something that a man once told me, and I was absolutely floored by this conversation because I did not realize this was a thing. Do men randomly download dating apps and go through and just swipe on